Today on Dirt and Trails, we are back with our 1969 Jeep Kaiser that we have been calling the Spartan. Now, last time you saw it, we got our engine and transmission back in their home. Today, we are moving on to front suspension, rear brakes, and getting our transfer case installed. Welcome to Dirt and Trails.
Next up in our driveline solution that we need to put into this Kaiser is the transfer case, which we got from Transfer Case Solutions. They took the time to make sure everything was rebuilt properly, torqued to spec, and we're good to go. First off, what I did was I put this bracket in here, which is just a simple L bracket designed to accept the stock bushings. From there, gussets are gonna go from left to right, as well as front to back like this. So now that I have this sorted out, how am I gonna get it over there? I designed this simple little dog bone here. And once welded in place, I'm gonna be able to grab the cherry picker, come over, pick this up, and hold it exactly where I need it in between the frame rails indefinitely. Now that this is set up and tacked together, I need to take it apart. Now that we have everything welded onto our crossmember and all of the mounts themselves welded up, it's time to marry this to this. Let's get her onto the table. All right, folks, so I came over, started inspecting the frame, getting ready to hang this T-case. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mark some holes, get ready to bolt this down, drill those holes, bolt her in there, and then keep carrying on. There we go. I can smell that I'm on fire. There you go. All right, everybody, next up, we need to start making some room for our front drive shaft. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make essentially just a really thick horseshoe out of some 3x1/4 inch bar that I have here, and I'm just gonna wrap it around this die that I made. All right, now we're gonna cut, trim, get to fitting. That actually fits better than I was expecting. All right, well, let's do some trimming. Hold this for me. Thanks. All right, now that we have everything cut, formed, we are ready to start getting tacky. All right, now, if you wanna come over here for a second. What I'm gonna do to add some strength to this is all in through here, you can see how This is just sheet metal formed into a C. I'm gonna box this into roughly about here. Just trace it out, cut it out, form it, send it, go from there. Fit it. As you can see, I didn't get the fitment that I wanted. I still have to play a little smashy with that down there, but I'm not gonna do that until everything is tacked in place. Now, we're gonna remove this T-case. It's gonna allow me to get right in here, get more comfortable, and we'll have a better weld. Now we're gonna start with the easiest welds, which are gonna be this guy and these guys. Now that we have this backing plate and the reinforcement ring in its forever home, I am completely comfortable in calling this front crossmember done, which is great because that's going to give us more than enough room for this front drive shaft to clear everything that could potentially get in the way. Now, move on to the next thing.
Now that we've got all the modifications made to get a drive shaft from our transfer case down to our front axle, we got to actually get the axle attached to the frame. Now to do that, we've got Brandon Romeo here. He's an expert fabricator and he's going to give us a hand. So what's the plan on getting that done?
First thing first, we're going to get that front axle located, make sure it's square to the chassis and everything's measured out correctly. Then we're going to get these radius arms put together. Then the next thing, we got to get the spring buckets on.
Well, it sounds like you got a ton of stuff to do, and I know I do too. I got to get going on that rear axle, get started on our brakes. So let's get to it.
Let's get to it. So now that we got this axle in place and squared out to the frame, we went ahead and we fit this radius arm up. Went ahead and punched a hole through one of these 1/4-inch plates just to get this guy mounted and located. We threw some tacks on it just so we're not juggling everything around. The next thing we're going to go to is we're going to get this bracket fit, figure out where we want it located. We're putting it back by this cross member because this front axle is going to put a lot of force into this frame, so we need as much strength as we can get. We also want a nice long radius arm so it doesn't start to affect the geometry when you're going down the trail, start making the steering do all kinds of funky stuff. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get this guy fit up, tacked in place. Make sure this side's right. All right. All right, so now that we got this thing all tacked out here on the truck, we're gonna remove it from the truck, bring it over to the fixture table, finish welding her out. So now that we got this radius arm here on the table and off the truck, we're gonna finish boxing everything out. We cut some gussets out of this same 1/4-inch plate that we used for the rest of this shackle. So we're gonna lay these in here nicely, tack them on all 4 corners, and get to welding. Let's get to it. Guys, now that we got this radius arm all welded out looking good, it's time to get started on the next 3. Next time you see me, we should have all 4 of these guys mounted onto the frame. All right, so now we got these 4 radius arms mounted on the frame, mounted to the axle. We went ahead and we utilized this jack to cycle the axle through its motion, make sure we had no binding, nothing weird when we were doing all of our articulations. So next thing, we're gonna get these coil buckets mounted, and for that, we're gonna take this spring, we're gonna see where everything sits, and as you can see, it's a little far away from this frame rail, so we had to make a little bit of a booster because we don't want this spring to be leaning in, out, forward, or back, because that's gonna create all kinds of weird binding issues out on the trail. So we went ahead and took one of these coil bucket kits. I cut a 2x4 rectangle tube out, threw some end caps on it, and it gives us the perfect boost we need off of the frame here, so we can get the spring sitting nice in the exact position we want it to be. So next thing we're gonna do is let's head on over to the table. I'll show you guys how we put one of these together. All right, so we got our coil bucket here. As you can see, this is one of the tubes. We cut this down as well. That makes up our standoff right there. And then I cut these end caps out of an 1/8 inch sheet. That's gonna cap off the ends of our tubes. So the next thing we gotta do is clean off all this mill scale and get it ready for welding. All right, so I went ahead and got all of our root passes done to ensure that there's real good fusion at the root of all these joints to aid in a very strong weld. So the next thing we're gonna do here is we're gonna brush all this color off here to give us a clean surface for our cover passes. I'm gonna weld out these end caps, then we'll go in and we'll get all our covers done. And now that we got the spring bucket tacked and fitted over on the driver's side, we're gonna come over here to the passenger side. We're gonna try and get everything to match. We went ahead and we measured out the location on the driver's side utilizing a tape measure. We measured this guy out to match its position on the frame left to right. The next thing we wanted to do is we went ahead and took this angle cube and we zeroed it out on the driver's side to make sure we can get this axis correct and keep it nice and level to the driver's side bucket. So after we get a couple tacks up top here, we'll be able to take this angle cube back to the driver's side, zero it out in this axis, and then that will give us the ability to match this angle as well to the driver's side. So let's get going. All right, so now that we got these coil buckets all welded out, it's time to get ready and go for the Panhard bar. We have these radius arms holding us forward and backward. The next thing we need to do is get a Panhard bar on here just so we don't have any shifting back and forth left to right with the axle, especially while we're going down the trail, going over bumps and everything. Let's get to it. First off, we need to weld out the Panhard bar brackets. Now we need to measure and cut our Panhard bar to length. All right, so as you guys just saw, we built this Panhard bar out over there on the table. So let's get it installed. We're gonna start off with this center hole. So we can start in the middle and see if we need to adjust either up or down. When adjusting out these rod ends to fit, we wanna make sure that we adjust everything equally. So we have the same adjustment on both sides. We also threw a little anti-seize on the threads here, just so we didn't have any problems with any binding. All right, now that everything's fit up and looking good, I think we can go ahead and weld out the rest of the brackets.
All right, I've already got one of the drum brakes on this rear axle done, and you guys are gonna come along while I do the second one. But first, we gotta get it torn apart. Whew. Oh, I can smell it already. Well, it looks like, thankfully, it's not stuck on there too bad, so we won't even have to grab a hammer and a punch to pull this axle shaft. All right, now some of you are probably wondering why I just removed an axle shaft in order to do brakes. That's because this is what's known as a full float axle, meaning that instead of the bearings being inside of the axle tube and having the weight ride on the axle shaft, the bearings are actually out here in the hub, and that's where the weight ends up riding. Now, our next step here, we're gonna get this snap ring out of the way, just like that. And now that that snap ring is out of the way, we're gonna pull out the key that that snap ring was holding in. That's just this little square guy. And what that does is it goes into this keyway and lines up with one of the slots in your nut here, keeps everything from being able to turn. And that little snap ring that we pulled out is what helps keep this key in place while everything's moving around. Now that we've got all the retaining stuff out of the way, we're gonna grab this big fancy axle nut socket and get the nut pulled on out of here. Now, there shouldn't be a whole lot of resistance on these things, and if there is, you probably got some issues. But so far, we're looking pretty good on this axle. Now comes pulling this entire drum and hub assembly off of here. Just like that. Now, we'll deal with this later. Oh man. I'm gonna clean this up. What we're gonna move on to now is actually getting our entire brake assembly removed. We're gonna do that the easy way by removing these 4 bolts and taking the entire backing plate. All right. There we go. All right. And there we have one whole drum brake assembly. Now, I mentioned that we took the entire backing plate off for a reason, and here it is. You can look and see that's a little messed up down there. Now, I don't know if this axle was dropped or what could have happened, but that's not gonna fly. Now, normally if this was a disc brake setup, this would just be a dust shield, it'd be a lot thinner metal, and we could actually bend it back into place. But because this is a drum brake, the drum actually rides against this surface that's bent, so we're gonna go ahead and replace the entire thing. But we're not gonna take this apart, because if you look, this is the entire assembly. Meaning we can leave all this intact and use it like a diagram so that we can reassemble onto the new backing plate. Now that we've got the old stuff out of the way, did a little bit of cleanup work, we've Got our new to us backing plate here. We're gonna get this installed, but real quick, I wanna point out just one difference between this and the old one. That is this right here. That's where our parking brake cable comes in. You'll see in this design, it's a bolt-in style, whereas in this one, it's more of a push-in style. Now, this is, if I remember right, it was right around 1985 that they made the switch from this design to that design. Now, the only real difference there, obviously, is just the cable that goes into it, which we've already got the correct ends for these new backing plates, so we're good to go there. Now, we're gonna be installing this with some new hardware with just a little bit of thread locker on there. Let me check the torque spec on that real quick. Now that we got our new backing plate installed, it's time to start building the new brakes with some high quality Duralast parts, starting with our wheel cylinder. Then we're gonna move on. They've also provided us with our wheel bearings, seal, drum, shoes, everything we needed to get this job done and done right. As you can see, it's a nice brand new part, and it matches the old one exactly, because Duralast parts are designed for OE form, fit, and function. So you know when you put one in, you're gonna get that OEM level of performance and reliability. Now that we got our wheel cylinder installed, there is one or two little pieces that we need to borrow from the old brakes. That's the little ends that go into the wheel cylinder. I'm gonna clean these up real quick and get them popped in place. Now, our next step is gonna be to get our shoes installed. We wanna make sure we get them on the right side. What do I mean when I say that? Well, I mean we need to figure out which one is leading and which one is trailing. If you look at these shoes, you'll notice that the plate that makes up the base of this brake shoe has all the same holes on both of them, but the friction material only goes all the way up on one. Now, how do you know which one goes which way? Well, this is where it comes in handy to have one of your old brakes handy, because you can look and see right here, our leading shoe is the one with the shorter friction material. So now we know which direction these need to go in. Now this is where drum brakes start to get really fun, and a lot of you guys at home start to get, well, sick of it. But with a little bit of patience and the right tools, drum brakes really are not that bad. One. So now that we've got our shoes installed, I realized that I almost forgot one very important step in doing brakes, and that was to add grease. Now on a drum brake, there's a few different spots you're gonna put your grease, that being anywhere that it contacts the backing plate. So in our case, it's gonna be the pads here, here, and here for both of our shoes, up here where they're gonna ride on this pin, and anywhere along the shoe itself that something is gonna be touching. So in here for our parking brake strut and our adjuster, we got a little bit in there, plus on the ends of our wheel cylinder. We're gonna grab a few more old pieces that I've already got cleaned up that we're gonna need to reuse, grab a few new pieces that are gonna go onto these to make everything work, and keep moving along. All right, we know that this needs to sit with the bow facing outward and that the spring needs to go on the forward side. Now, this isn't gonna fit in here perfect at this point because we don't have any of the return springs or anything like that to actually hold this in. But we want all this stuff in place before we add the springs because these are not fun to try and pry apart once all that's installed. All right, so next up we have our adjuster. I'm gonna take this off and put just a little bit of grease in here, just a little bit. Just like that. Before we install our parking brake lever, we got to do a little bit of assembly work here. So basing everything off of the old one we're looking at here, we're gonna slip this guy in like that. And we've got this spring that's gonna run from here up to there. Now using the handle of our drum brake pliers, we're gonna take the notch and set it there in this little bracket. There we go, just like that. So now that we've got that installed, got this spring, it's gonna sit like that. Then we have the actual lever that the parking brake cable connects to. It's gonna go something like that in through the back of our shoe. So we'll take and we'll slip this in like so. Tell me why I wanted to do this on camera. All right, so we're starting to get some stuff put in here, and if you're doing this from scratch like we are here, you're probably getting a little tired of stuff falling out of place, because if we were doing this on the original backing plate, well, then we would have just done one side at a time, everything would have been locked in, it wouldn't have been an issue. So I'm gonna show you a little trick to help deal with that. All you need is a ratchet strap. We're gonna take our ratchet strap, go around just like so. Now, if you can, you wanna try and get your hooks off of your friction surface, but it's not a huge deal either way. We're not putting a ton of tension on this. We're just gonna start pulling these shoes in nice and easy. And as we do that, we're just gonna make sure that everything stays in place right where it's supposed to be. And then once all this is locked in place, the rest of this job is gonna be a lot easier. From here, all we've really gotta do is just start getting our springs put in. So let's get to it. We'll take this guy, and go right in there, just like that. I'll leave the adjuster sitting like that. Take this stuff, get it back in place. All right, there you have it. You can see the adjuster's in place. It's working just fine. Slip that spring in there. Perfect. Just go ahead and do one of these. Get around the side. There we go. That's gonna be this guy to go in here. Let's see if we can make this happen, huh? There we go. I'll do this guy here on this side. And we'll just keep it angled down, rotate out. There we go. There, and now doing that, I did not position this on our friction material. I positioned it right here on one of these bonding rivets that actually holds this to the backing plate. We are moving right along with this thanks to all these Duralast parts that help to get this thing back together, but we're not done with them yet. And that last piece is gonna be our parking brake cable. And as you can see, it is that different design where it bolts through the back of the backing plate instead of having a little push-in collar. We're just gonna have to bolt it in, not a huge deal. Now it's gonna come in like this because the spring here is actually what helps to retain the end inside of the arm in the brake. Come in with our first bolt here. Now that the cable itself is bolted in, we need to get it connected to our bracket behind this shoe. There we go. And now that we've got the cable itself inside of the loop on our bracket here, we're gonna go to the other end of it, pull it through, make sure it doesn't come loose, and then we should be good here. All right, perfect. With the parking brake cable installed, that means that we've got everything inside of the drum done, and now we get to move on and deal with this big heavy assembly here that is the drum and hub. Now what we've got to do here, we need to get these old wheel studs punched out so that we can remove this from the old drum, get it installed on a new one with some new bearings and a new seal installed so it's not going to leak, make any noise, or give us any issues. All right. So now that we've got it here up on the table, we're gonna go ahead and get these wheel studs punched out, and we're gonna do that the quick way. So I'm gonna throw these on. We'll have some fun. Oh wow, that actually came off a lot easier than I expected. Normally you gotta fight those just a little bit, but now that this is separated, we can go ahead and chuck this thing because this is no longer of any use to us. So the next step is gonna be to get our seal removed. Now you can get an actual seal puller, but sometimes you get lucky and be able to just pry them out. This is not working the way it usually does. All right, let's try an actual seal puller and see if that gets us any further. Well, there's part of it. Yikes. All right, so since our seal puller just went through the metal part of this seal, I'm gonna go grab a torch and actually heat this thing up a little bit to try and help us out getting this removed. Ooh, that does not smell great. All right, this is your last chance before you get absolutely obliterated, so please, for your own sake, come on out of here. Oh, should have listened. All right, so as you can see, this seal is getting just absolutely destroyed. The pry bar didn't work, the seal puller didn't work, we added some heat, that didn't work. So now we're gonna get a little brutal, and I'm gonna take this chisel, and in this spot right here that the seal puller has pushed through, I'm gonna peel this back a little bit, and then I'm gonna take the chisel and I'm gonna split it straight down like that, and that's gonna allow me to start peeling this seal back from our hub and get it removed. There we go, you see how it's moving now? That's exactly what we're looking for. Almost. And that is one extremely mangled seal, but hey, sometimes that's the way it goes with these things. We have no idea how long that was stuck in there. So we're done with that, and we can move on, start getting our bearings out of here. We need to take these snap ring pliers and remove a snap ring. All right, there we go. Now, we gotta get this bearing and race pressed out. Now, in this hub, you can see the direction that that bearing faces. That means that the cone is downward like this, meaning that it has to go in like so, like that. And the bearing race is actually what holds this thing in there. So we have to press the bearing and the race out together. Now for that, we'll just use a standard bearing, race, and seal driver. We're gonna find one that fits. Before I install this on here, you see that it's tapered like that so that when you go to install a race, it can fit perfectly around the inside and press it in nice and even. Now, I don't want to mar up that surface because the inside of this bearing is just slightly smaller than the largest outer diameter of that taper. If I were to try and drive this aluminum driver into that steel bearing, it would end up scratching up this surface here, and we would lose a ring of aluminum around this. Now, we don't want to damage these tools because we don't want the tools to damage bearing races when we go to install them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in upside down like that, and then if we damage anything, it'll just be this flat surface on the back, not the important surface here on the front. Position as centered as you can be, and then all right, so now we've got that bearing and race removed, and man, that is nasty. So the last thing we need to get removed from this hub is gonna be our inner bearing race. We're gonna do that with this long punch. So you do wanna be a little bit careful here. Just find the edge of it, working our way around. All right, you hear that change in sound? That means that that is hitting against other metal, being the table, meaning that it is out. So now that we have both of our bearings and our races removed, I'm gonna take this thing out to the parts cleaner, get it cleaned up a little bit before we start putting all the new Duralast parts in. All right, I took our hub, ran it through the parts washer, ran it through the sandblaster, and gave it a fresh coat of paint. Then I ran around the inside where we're gonna be reinstalling all of our parts with a red scuffing pad, make sure everything's nice and clean. So now we can start reinstalling these Duralast bearings, beginning with the outer. Now, this is gonna look a little bit weird because the front of this hub is not large enough for this bearing and race to go through. So we have to install the bearing sort of backwards, if you will, meaning that the cone needs to face towards the cone of the other bearing because they face each other. So the bearing needs to go in first and the race gets pressed in on top of it. Now you want to try and center it up best you can. Then what I like to do is take a punch and just tap it in, because normally when you do this, you'll see that there will be 2 points where this thing kind of rocks. That's where I like to take the punch and just give it a quick tap in both of those locations to get it started. Then we'll use the driver to finish it up. Now I do have this on here backwards because we don't have the cone of our race to set on here. So I don't want this pressing in and gouging into the aluminum of the tool. Nice light taps. All right, you hear that change in tone? That means that this thing's bottomed out and fully installed. We'll just verify You can see that bearing does not have a whole lot of room to move around. That's what we're looking for. Now, we'll install our snap ring. All right, nice and easy. Look at that. All right, so with that installed, we're ready to get the inner bearing done. Now that looks pretty even to start out with, so we'll go ahead and switch over to our larger driving tool and get this punched in. We'll go ahead and put our driver in here. All right, and there you hear that. Ding means done. So we've got the race installed. Make sure we didn't get any weird shavings or anything from pounding that in. Bearing goes in, sounds good. Now, with the bearings installed, we can get the seal in. Just a little bit of oil to put on that. Don't need a whole lot. Just enough to help this thing get into place, keep that rubber from tearing if it ends up catching anywhere. And then same thing as before, look for right there where it's starting to rock. Start it there. Okay, now you don't normally want to do that, but because it was light taps just to get it started, the hammer is fine. But now that we're ready to drive it all the way, I'm gonna grab a block of wood so we don't damage this with the hammer. All right. Now, I'm not seeing any more gaps, so I think we're safe to say that that is fully installed, and now we've got a fully assembled hub. But at this point, you're probably wondering why I didn't grease either of these bearings before I installed them. Well, that's because these are oil bath bearings, which means they receive their lubrication from the gear oil inside the differential itself. Instead of greasing, once the hub is fully assembled and the seal is in place, you take a little bit of whatever gear oil you're gonna use, and you just pour it right over, and you work it in manually. Now, all this is gonna do is this is gonna prevent a dry start when you go to drive this thing for the very first time. Get some gear oil in there, just work it around all inside that bearing. All right, now that we've got that gear oil worked into our bearings, we know they're nice and lubricated. I need to get this hub installed onto our new drum with some new wheel studs, but that means I'm gonna have to leave the shop to go use the press, so we'll see you in a little bit. Now I've got our old hub pressed in with some brand new studs attached to our Duralast drum, which means that we're ready to take the whole assembly over here and get it installed onto our axle. Oh. So we're just gonna, nice and easy. All right, just like that. Make sure we're fully seated on there. Now, we will have to go back later and adjust those shoes out a little bit because it went on a little easy. You want just the slightest bit of catch when you go to put this drum on here. The next step is gonna be to get our wheel bearing lock nut installed. Now that we've got this on there hand tight, I'm gonna go ahead and torque it to spec while I'm spinning the drum. Ooh. All right, so now we've got our click, and we can look and see that we're just a little bit off on where our key needs to go. So we're gonna back this off to where it meets up and then tighten it back into place to where that key is gonna match up. Come in here. Now, the lock key is just gonna slide into place right here. And what I like to do, even though we've got a key, that little bit of a backwards turn is gonna allow the nut to actually lock that key into place in addition to the secondary lock that we're installing now. All right, now with that snapped in place, we go ahead and get our axle shaft installed. Now, there's a lot of mixed information out there on whether or not you need RTV when you're doing these. You don't really need it if your surfaces are good and clean, which this one cleaned up pretty good, and so did the axle shaft side. But just for a little bit of peace of mind in case there's some pitting or anything like that in either surface, we're gonna go ahead and do a slight skin of RTV on either side of this gasket just to make sure we get a good positive seal. And like I said, we're not doing a whole lot, just a really light skin of it, just to fill in any light gouges or deformations that we might have in the surface. Now that we've got a nice, even, thin bead of RTV on both of our surfaces, we're gonna go ahead and drop our gasket down and get the shaft installed. the gasket set before we actually press this down. Just tap it into the RTV. And just like that. We'll get our first bolt started. All right, now that we've got those all snugged up with the impact, we still got to torque them down, but this job is pretty much finished. Man, this stuff is looking awesome, and it looks like you got a ton of work finished up. Where are you at now?
Just gotta throw these springs on and we can get the front end down on the ground. You wanna help me out?
Hell yeah. Man, you know, these buckets and brackets and everything, they look great. I mean, you feel like sticking around? We got a ton of fab work left to do.
Yeah, let's do it.
Sweet. All right, well, with both of those springs installed, I think that we can call this front suspension pretty well finished up, which means that we are ready to get some wheels and tires installed, drop it down on the ground, and get all the measurements we need to do our custom rear suspension. But, well, that's all the time we've got for today, so we'll see you next time. He's got it.
That's a drop it.
Are you a fan of PowerNation? If so, we got a brand new show for you to check out. Blacktop Speed Shop.
Subscribe to the PowerNation YouTube channel so you never miss a new episode.
110, baby, 110. It's time to load up so we can get to work.